This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. A New York court has vindicated a former Buffalo police officer who was fired for stopping a fellow cop from choking a handcuffed black man during an arrest 15 years ago. In 2006, Cariol Horne, who is black, saw a white officer repeatedly punching the man in the face before putting him in a chokehold. After Horne heard the man say, "I can't breathe," she intervened, grabbing the officer's arm. After the incident, Horne was sanctioned by the Buffalo Police Department, reassigned, then fired in 2008, just months before she was eligible to receive her full pension. Last week, a New York court ruled, making her eligible for back pay and pension benefits. New York State Supreme Court Judge Dennis Ward cited Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his ruling, writing, "The time is always right to do right." Ward also wrote, recent events in the national news, including the death last year in the city of Minneapolis of George Floyd, who died from unreasonable physical force being applied for over 9 minutes, have sparked national outrage over the use of this practice, unquote. The judge continued, one of the issues in all of these cases is the role of other officers at the scene, and particularly their complicity in failing to intervene to save the life of a person to whom such unreasonable physical force is being applied. To her credit, Officer Horne did not merely stand by, but instead sought to intervene despite the penalty she ultimately paid for doing so, the court said. The officer Horne intervened against, Gregory Kitkowski, would later be sentenced to a 4-month term in a federal prison for a 2009 incident in which he assaulted 4 African-American teenagers in handcuffs. The man Cariol Horne saved from Kitkowski's chokehold, Neil Mack, credits her with saving his life. Meanwhile, Cariol Horne has proposed Cariol's Law, which would make it the duty of enforcement officers to intervene in cases of brutality. It would protect officers who intervene and punish officers who cover up abuses or falsify reports. Buffalo City Council voted last fall to adopt the legislation, and Horne is calling on state governments and Congress to follow their lead. For more, we go to Buffalo to speak with Cariol Horne. Also with us is Intisar Rabb, a Harvard Law School professor who's one of the 3 attorneys representing Horne. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Cariol Horne, congratulations on winning this victory in court. Take us back to 2006. Where were you when you saw this white officer attacking this handcuffed black man?
I went to the home of Neil Mack at 707 Walden Avenue. And when I went inside of the house, that's when Neil Mack was handcuffed and being punched in the face. So once we got Neil Mack out of the house and went outside, that is when Gregory Kitkowski started choking him. And that's when I released the chokehold, and then he punched me in the face.
And what did you do?
Well, I got ready to defend myself, but 2 officers came between us, and 2 officers pulled me back. So then I went to the station house, reported it to the chief, and then an internal investigation started, and I became the target.
And you ultimately were fired?
Yes.
How did that affect your life, Cariol Horne? And why is this vindication coming 15 years later?
It affected my life in a lot of ways, financially, emotionally, physically. You know, I had 5 children. I mean, I have 5 children, but they were younger then. And I knew that I did the right thing, so I couldn't understand why they would not do the right thing, meaning the city police department.
So you were fired. The white cop who was assaulting this black man wasn't fired. He, the handcuffed man, says you saved his life. And then the white cop ends up going to jail for assaulting 4 black teens?
He went to jail for exactly what I had said he did, using unnecessary, unlawful force.
I want to bring Intisar Rabb into the conversation. How did you get involved with this case? You weren't Cariol Horne's original lawyer.
No, I got a call in summer of this past year in the wake of the killing of George Floyd from Rami Nashashibi, who's the director of the Inner City Muslim Action Network, an organization in Chicago. He's the author, as you mentioned, or the songwriter of the song for Mama Please for Cariol Horne. So he called telling me about the facts of her case, that she had done the right thing. She saved a man. Neil Mack is the George Floyd who lived, but she suffered the consequences of doing something right, as if she had done something wrong. She was fired. She needs vindication. And I thought, absolutely, she does. Very soon after that, Ron Sullivan, Neil Eggleston, we all joined in, took the case immediately, and thought that this has to be something where even if the law says on paper that it's impossible, we're not going to take no for an answer, and we're going to do everything that we can to help bring her justice.
Professor Rabb and Attorney Rabb, why did this case affect you so deeply?
This case really affected me in two ways. I think the case itself, our notice of it, and the handing down of the judgment comes in against a backdrop of a widespread epidemic of violent police excessive use of force that has to be curbed, I think, from all sides. The law has to be used as a tool for justice. So I think it's the backdrop of what was and the context of what is today that really demanded that we get involved in Cariol's case and ensure that her behavior is lauded and that she becomes an example for other police officers, that this courageous judge becomes an example for other courts to correct past wrongs.
And what do you think of Cariol's law?
I think the law is one that should spread far and wide so that it will both create a duty to intervene for police officers against fellow officers who are using excessive force unlawfully, as we see happens way too often this week alone. And I think that one of the provisions of the law is that it creates a retroactive cause of action. So when incidents happen, if an incident happened 20 years prior, a person like Cariol Horne, who suffered the consequences, bad consequences of doing the right thing, can still get justice. So I think this is both the law and the case can be exemplary models for other cities and states. There's a saying, save a life, it's as if you've saved all of mankind. The law and the police officers can help be in that position of saving all mankind instead of taking life in the way that Cariol Horne did in saving a life.
But this case does not mean that Cariol Horne gets compensated for the emotional damage that was done to her, being stripped of her job, losing her pension. This is 15 years later. Does she get reparations for that?
And we hope that she will. We took this case as a first step. The law moves slowly, but the first step toward her getting compensation or damages of that sort would be at least to clear her name, clear out the wrongful termination for her actions. And I think she may well go on to determine next steps. Right now, we were focused on getting justice for Cariol Horne in this case.
So, Cariol Horne, has this changed your view of police, both now this vindication and also what happened then? We have a photograph of you standing with Martin Guggiolo, who people might remember, the elder man, the big peace activist in Buffalo, who was pushed down by police officers. They cracked his skull.
What's your question?
Cariol, I was just asking you, does this change your view of the police department and of police in general, what their role is, and what you feel should be the direction of police reform?
No, it doesn't change my view of policing because there's still a lot of work to be done. When you hear stories of Adam Toledo, Dante Wright, and even Corin Nazario, this is what people have been talking about forever. There needs to be an international law. So, I mean, Cariol's law is great that it's been passed in Buffalo. It still needs to be amended to include a national registry because these officers who are involved in these cases should not be able to leave one department and go to another one so that they can continue to do the same thing. And then the system, I think that, you know, what I did was right. And I think that the judge was awesome in his decision, and that's a start. So if you're changing the system from within, that's a start.